The regulator has fined
Thames Water nearly £123 million following 2 investigations into the company.
Your water bill has doubled, but the pipes still leak. The rivers overflow with sewage, and the water company meant to fix it is £22 billion in debt. Not because they built new treatment plants, not because they laid new infrastructure, but because an asset manager made more money from debt than from clean water. While you paid more, they siphoned the profits, and no one stopped them. Not regulators, not ministers, not government. It wasn't just failure, it was by design. This is the story of dirty privatisation, how Britain sold its most vital service and why we're all still paying the price. In 1989, Margaret Thatcher sold Britain's water.
Privatised water is a better deal than nationalised water. Water privatisation, I believe, will go very successfully indeed.
Not just Thames Water, the entire system. Public utilities built over centuries, handed to private shareholders for promises of efficiency and investment. The sale was clean, no debt, full infrastructure, including reservoirs, treatment works, thousands of miles of Victorian pipes, all transferred to companies that promised to modernise what the state had supposedly failed to maintain. Thames Water floated on the London Stock Exchange. British families bought shares. The largest water company in the country, serving 15 million people across London and the South East, wasn't public service anymore. It was an investment opportunity. For 16 years, it operated like a normal company, regulated by Ofwat, but ultimately accountable to its shareholders. By 2006, things were changing. German utility giant RWE had bought Thames Water in 2001, but the company was struggling, leaking pipes, pollution incidents, and mounting pressure from regulators. RWE wanted out. Enter Macquarie. The Australian investment bank didn't see problems, they saw potential. Not potential for better water services, potential for profit extraction. In October 2006, a Macquarie-led consortium paid £8 billion for Thames Water. The deal was complex, a web of offshore funds, pension money, and borrowed cash. But the principle was simple: turn Britain's largest water company into a cash machine. Macquarie had done this before. Infrastructure funds were their speciality. Buy essential services, load them with debt, extract maximum dividends, and then walk away when the bills came due. They called it financial engineering. Others would call it something else. But in 2006, it was perfectly legal. Ofwat had no power to stop debt loading, no authority to block dividend extraction, no mechanism to prevent what was about to happen. The regulators had been designed to monitor performance, not protect against plunder. Thames Water was about to be transformed from a public utility into a private ATM, and the people of London wouldn't find out until it was far too late. Macquarie's strategy was simple. Buy the company with borrowed money, transfer that debt to the company itself, use the company's revenue stream to service the debt, and pay massive dividends. When they acquired Thames Water in 2006, it was in £3.4 billion worth of debt. Within 11 years, that debt had tripled to £10.8 billion. The money didn't go into infrastructure. The money didn't go into sewage works. The money went into dividends. £2.7 billion extracted over 11 years. But instead of repaying the debt themselves, at least £2 billion worth of debt was transferred to Thames Water's books. Essentially, they bought Thames Water with borrowed cash, then made the company and its customers, i.e. you and me, pay it back. The returns were extraordinary. According to reports, Macquarie's investments received returns of between 15.5% and 19% annually. That's nearly double what you'd expect from a stable utility investment. Meet Grace from Salford. She's a teaching assistant, she's divorced, raising 2 kids on £28,000 a year. Her water bill has doubled since 2006, but she doesn't know why. She doesn't know that almost 30% of what she pays goes towards servicing the debt that was never used to improve her water supply. While Macquarie took billions, Thames Water deteriorated, leakage rates remained high, pollution incidents increased, but the dividends kept flowing. In 2017, they sold their final stake in Thames Water. They walked away just as the consequences began to surface. Thames Water was loaded with unsustainable debt, underinvested infrastructure, and a business model designed for extraction. The debt remained, the dividends were gone, and the pipes were still leaking. By 2023, Thames Water was struggling to survive. £19 billion of debt, cash was low and infrastructure crumbling, but the crisis wasn't limited to Thames Water. The model Macquarie had perfected, debt loading, dividend extraction, regulatory arbitrage, had become the industry standard. Last year, water companies across England spilled sewage for 3.6 million hours, enough sewage to fill Wembley Stadium twice over. Every 8 minutes, somewhere in England, a sewage overflow pumps human waste into waterways that people swim in, fish in, and drink from. Thames Water is responsible for 300,000 hours of those spills. There's more shit in our rivers than in Parliament, and in both cases, no one's cleaning it up. In 2024, the Environment Agency recorded over 450,000 sewage spills, and only 12% of storm overflows avoided spillages. But spills are not the only consequence. Water bills are rising faster than inflation, faster than wages, and faster than most people can afford. The average water bill is projected to rise from $504 in 2024 to $700 in 2030.
5 yearly price review for all the water companies in Britain. The water companies say we want to spend this much money. Ofwat told them how much they can increase bills. It's a whopping 36% on average.
Grace's water bill has gone from £34 to £52 a month since 2020. It doesn't sound like much, but that extra £18 means fewer food shops per month. Meanwhile, Thames Water teetered on the edge of collapse. In February 25, the company secured a £3 billion emergency loan. Without it, Britain's largest water company would have collapsed. But the debt didn't disappear. The debt that Macquarie had loaded in 2006 is still there. It's still growing and still consuming revenue. You're still paying for decisions made nearly 20 years ago. It's give and take. They take the profits while we inherit the problems. Since privatisation in '89, water companies have collectively taken on £58 billion of debt, not to improve services, but to fund shareholder returns. The consequences are visible everywhere. In 2023, United Utilities, which serves the North West, spilled sewage for 656,000 hours, a 54% increase from the previous year. Southern Water was fined £90 million for deliberately dumping sewage. Anglican Water and Yorkshire Water each followed variations of the same playbook. Financial engineering disguised as efficient management. But the model only works while the infrastructure holds together. When century-old pipes start failing, when climate change brings extreme weather, when population growth outpaces investment, the system starts to crack.
Yorkshire Water is one of 3 companies set to be fined millions of pounds for failing to manage sewage spills.
Yes, the regulator is proposing to hit the firm with a £47 million bill after an investigation found it failed to keep its water treatment sites up to standard and allowed sewage to pump into our rivers and our seas.
The North Yorkshire contamination in May 2025 wasn't a Thames Water problem. Grace doesn't live down south. She gets her water from United Utilities, but her bills are rising for the same reasons. Since 2021 alone, the UK's water companies have paid £2.5 billion in dividends while adding £8.2 billion to their collective debts. The math is simple. You pay more, they earn more. But in Scotland, water is publicly owned. It spends 10% of its revenue on debt, compared to 20 or 30 in England. Customers pay less, the water's cleaner, and the infrastructure isn't collapsing because no one's stripping it for profit. The Macquarie model wasn't a loophole, it was the blueprint. Macquarie didn't break the law, they didn't have to. The rules were written to let them do it. The regulator could watch, it couldn't prevent. The system isn't broken, it's working, just not for you. In May 2025, Ofwat fined Thames Water £122.7 million.
This is the largest fine ever issued by Ofwat, so it's quite sizable, as you say, 123 million. But that's actually broken down into 2 separate investigations that Ofwat have just concluded.
But compared to the £2.7 billion extracted under Macquarie, it was nothing, like getting a parking fine after crashing the economy. Even in collapse, the company was still paying dividends, still servicing debt it should never have carried. In 2025, Thames Water is clinging to survival. Over £18 billion in debt, sewage still spilling, bills still rising. This is dirty privatisation. The system isn't broken, it was sold, and we are bearing the consequences.